What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. I'm going to do a quick pop-up show here, take some comments, talk about the Cubs win. As I talk to you from my hotel in Birmingham, I'll be at the Rickwood game tomorrow in honor of Willie Mays and the Negro Leagues. I cannot wait to go there and do that. So for me, the throwbacks are absolutely what baseball is all about. So let's talk a little bit about the Cubs. I got to tell you, it was a big win for the Cubs today. They finally win a series. It was great to see the bats come to life. We were wondering about Kyle Hendricks. He did great. Dansby Swanson. If the team's going to turn it around, I keep saying it, it's going to come down to Dansby Swanson. And as he's heating up, I'm noticing that the rest of the team is following. So get in the comments section. Let's talk a little bit of Cubs baseball. But before we do, let me thank you for being here, first off, on the show. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe, share with your friends, and let's talk a little bit of Cubs baseball. Yo! Hey, thanks all you guys. Thanks all you guys for being on here and talking Cubs baseball. Cubs with a win. They beat the Giants. It wasn't pretty. It got a little bit intense after our friend Jorge Soler belted a grand slam home run, but the Cubs win the game against the Giants, and it was a must-needed win for the Cubs, and they do it 6-5. So there's so many things about this game that I feel like are worth talking about, so I appreciate you guys as you hang out. If you got any questions or comments, want to get in on the conversation, just do the comment section here today as I talk to you from the hotel. But let's just start with where I feel like you have to start, and that's Kyle Hendricks. Who would have seen this coming? And I'm going to be the first one to say that I tip my cap. I didn't think that he would be able to turn it around. And I don't think that that's an unfair assessment. I think there was a lot of people that were wondering if he was going to be able to turn it around. It was just the way that he was getting belted, beaten around the yard like he was. And it was historically bad start to the season. But Craig Counsell talked about him on the Cubs postgame, and it was really interesting listening to Counsell's opinions and thoughts about Kyle Hendricks. And what he said was he listens, and he's not afraid to learn and change things. Kyle had an incredible curveball, and it was one that he has used a lot more than he has in the past. And that's helped him out. His control was really good. He got the job done, but now you start to piece together where he was and then where he is. That's like 16 innings where he hasn't given up a run. But more importantly, it was just how he looks out on the diamond. I think that was the most important thing to me because the Cubs have to have him. They have to have him in that starting rotation succeed because Wicks is out, Ben Brown is out, and we're going to talk about where the injuries are right now with this team. But it was like a breath of fresh air seeing him out there pitch. It was like a sigh of relief, right? Because we all pull for Kyle Hendricks. We love Kyle Hendricks, but it just hasn't been there this year. And it's a young man's game. But I got to tell you, man, I thought that, and Travis says the sense of urgency has changed. Maybe the players have been reading the comments here. I felt the same way. You know, I feel like they've got some issues in that back bullpen. We know that, guys. The bullpen is just not that good. But how about the fact that we got Keegan Thompson yesterday and Colton Brewer today that are out there getting saves, right? So that tells me that there is no – without pulling the closer role from Neris, that tells you that it's just going to be who pitches the next inning. And that may be a good strategy, but I got to tell you, I feel the sense of urgency now, and they need to feel the sense of urgency because if they don't, they're not going to win. And the season is in the balance right now. Last year, they fell so far behind that by the time they started playing good baseball, it was too late, and they ended up one game back. But the problem wasn't that, you know, the way that they played down the stretch. It was part of the problem. The other part of the problem was that they didn't take advantage of games in the beginning of the season. So I felt like the sense of urgency was there. It was great to see Kyle Hendricks go back out. I hope he can continue it. If I'm wrong on him, I told you guys this, and I believe this. I'd be glad to be wrong. I hope that I'm eating crow on this. I hope he comes back and he has the best season of his career from this point or the last couple of points he's pitched on. It was awesome to see him 5 2/3 innings, all the strikeouts, all the swings and misses, in control, the curveball. He's throwing that curveball and they're like just standing there watching, and that thing's like hooking in like a fish hook, like whoop, like Uncle Charlie. So, man, fantastic game for Hendricks, not just that he went out there and helped the Cubs get a win, but just seeing that it felt like the old Kyle Hendricks was back. And the biggest compliment that we gave to him through the struggles that he's had is how he always maintains that positivity. He would have the bad games and he'd say, you know what, hey, I'm sorry I let the team down. I'm going to do this better next time. Stay focused on what his job was. I wasn't sure what to expect today, but, man, I'm really happy about that. Honestly, it brings joy to my heart to see him pitch like that. So go Kyle Hendricks and go Cubs. Now, the second guy is a guy that the Cubs cannot win without. They paid this guy 7 years to be a contributor to this team, and they do not want to have another Jason Hayward situation. And when you put those stats a couple of days together, head-to-head, it's the exact same stats, Jason Hayward and Dansby Swanson, right? Well, the last 2 games, Dansby Swanson's hit home runs. And I'll tell you what I really like about what he's doing at the plate right now. And I noticed this when he was coming up through the system. And I remember having conversations with people, scouts, about what I thought Dansby Swanson would be. Because remember now, he was like the first overall pick, right? So he came out of Vanderbilt, and then the trade from Arizona to the Braves, well, it got people fired. I mean, it was just one of the worst trades ever. And then, obviously he went and helped the Braves win a World Series. But the thing I always liked about him, because I was always concerned about him being a long-term option at the plate and being a real force at the plate, was that I like the way that he's able to use the entire field. Well, he wasn't doing that at the beginning of the year. Both home runs have been the right center. I remember watching him hit last year, and the toughest thing you can do to a pitcher is when you take a really good pitch away and you just flip it over the infield and drop it in front of the outfield. When you take their best pitch and you're not trying to overpower it, you're just trying to ladle that thing the other way. Dansby, when he's going well, is really capable of doing that. And I thought that the home run was great. It was on a 3-0 pitch. And then how about the 2-run hit that ended up being really the difference in the game, right? It was on a 2-strike pitch. So you can tell that he's starting to get comfortable at the plate. And then, how about the Bodie at third? In the 9th inning, Dansby making great plays defensively. I loved having Bodie at third. It's good to see him back in there. And so, but here's my point. Like, it takes an entire team to win. Dansby had been so bad, and he is the leader of this team. And it's hard to lead a team when you're bad. Yan Gomes was a leader of the team. And he was so bad that the Cubs designated him for assignment. He didn't give them another option. Well, Dansby, you can't designate Dansby Swanson for assignment. And not to say that they would want to, but you can't. You've got him signed for 7 years. He's in year 2 of that deal. He's got to go through. He's got to be contributing. He's got to be driving the guys behind the scenes. He's got to lead this team. So the reason that I feel like he's so important to this club is that his success is going to make it easier for him to help other people have success. So really a great offensive game for him again. And the Cubs would not have won without Dansby Swanson. And, and as you guys get in the comment section, he's coming around. He's got to come around, or this season's going to be a disaster. So Dansby can't be an easy out. I know he might bat 8th in the lineup. Maybe you got him 8th and Pete Crow Armstrong 9th. If you get this lineup going, that may make this team really strong because those guys could be 2 really good hitters at the bottom of the lineup and dangerous. I know you guys want to talk about the bullpen, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But let me get to this next. Bad luck Cubs. I know bad luck. We talk about bad luck being, an excuse. It's just not, though. I mean, sometimes how about the double play that Pete Crow Armstrong's at second? He's got the secondary lead. That's how you're supposed to do it. Is if no one's holding you on and the infield's in, you get a big lead because if there's a base hit, you got to come in the score. And then the guy lines the ball. I think it was Crawford catches it or whoever it was and runs to the base and doubles him up. And it's just bad luck, Cody Bellinger's up with the bases loaded, grounds into a 1-2-3 double play. The Cubs have definitely had their share of bad luck. But with that said, they also had some good luck in this game. And how about Dansby getting picked off? They got him. And then, he runs through the ball at the first baseman, drops it. Morel scores. You win by a run. So there was some good luck in there as well. So they've had to deal with their share of bad luck, but they've also had some good luck today. And it definitely helped them win. All right, let's go to the comment section and you guys fire them out there. This is Nico's team. Look, I'm not saying that Nico isn't the best player in his position on the team. I just don't see Nico as being a real vocal leader. I think that he's an excellent player, but I just don't, knowing him, being around him, the type of person he is, I just don't see him being the guy that is a vocal leader on a team. I think he's a good player, and he's been the one guy that we haven't had to worry about a whole lot, although, he does struggle like anybody else. But Dansby Swanson came in, he was paid to be the leader. He's the guy that, that is going to go out there and kind of set the tone. He comes from Atlanta, where for years the Braves have had great clubhouse leadership. The Cubs clubhouse leadership has kind of gone up and down, but I've heard stories about the Braves and just the way that they, back when they had Glavine and Smoltz and Chipper Jones and those guys, and then leading into Freddie Freeman and Dansby, and then now, with the guys that they have, they just had such a great clubhouse, and I think that's one of the things that the Cubs liked about Dansby Swanson was that he was going to bring you leadership, and it's a lot easier to lead when you're winning, and yeah, it was good to see Nico driving the ball today. Let's talk about the bullpen. This bullpen's they're scary, and I know you guys were asking me about Tyson Miller. Maybe me being a back end guy, maybe being a closer, type guy. And I told you, I said, the thing about it is that he hasn't really pitched in a high leverage situation. Well, he did today. And it just, it's not that he gave up the grand slam to Jorge Soler. And we remember him. I mean, he can hit the ball as hard as any human I've ever seen. It was that he just kept missing, and eventually you knew that Jorge Soler was going to clobber him. Now, I've got this theory on when you have a 5-run lead and the bases are loaded, sometimes you're better giving up a grand slam and just getting everyone off base than if he would have doubled and then the next guy represents the tying run and the pressure's still out there because you feel those guys on the bases. Sometimes you clear them out and it's like, you know what, we still got a 1-run lead, just get the next guy out. But they've got to stop walking batters. I know that. I think that the Cubs are going to have to be creative. They're going to have to go out there and do the same thing that they did, adding Tomas Neto, the catcher from the Mets. They're going to have to see when there's someone available and swing in and grab them. They've done that in the minor leagues with all of these free agent pitchers that they've gone and brought in. And a lot of those guys are starting to get close to the big leagues now. Trey Shupak just got promoted from AA to AAA, and he was just a guy that has, some of these guys have big league experience. They feel like the Cubs, like maybe if you catch one or two of these guys and they're able to help you out, then you've done something. It obviously doesn't feel like, like there's a whole lot of options for Craig Counsell when it comes to what he can do with this bullpen right now. So let me look at Iowa, and I'm going to just kind of look through here and see some guys and maybe tell you what I think about some of them and where they could jump in. Brad Wicks there, 3-1 record. You remember him, a 4 ERA, he's a guy that's pitched in the big leagues before. The other guy's Kyle McCowan, but he was dominant in Double-A. He was one of those guys they basically pulled off the scrap heap, and in 2 starts he's got a 9 ERA. So making that transition is going to be interesting. Frankie Scalzo Jr. is a guy to keep an eye on. He pitched in Double-A this year, didn't allow a run. Now what's he going to do when he gets to Triple-A and he faces that next level of hitter? And how is he someone that could jump in and help the Cubs? Good luck. Yeah, Smiley getting 2 phantom strike calls on the outside corner. How bad? Let's just be honest. How bad have these umpires been in this series? I mean, how bad? I mean, you sit there and watch these games, and you're like, man. I mean, these are supposed to be like big league umpires. I posted on my Twitter the other day of the video of 27 strikes that were missed in a game behind the plate. That baseball's got to get to the point, and maybe it would have hurt the Cubs today in this instance, but over the course of the season, I think the one thing that you want is just to know what a strike is and what a ball is. And some of these guys are really good behind the plate, and some of these guys aren't really good. So it's interesting to say, hey, here's what happened here. Here's what happened there in a game. But then you go back and you watch, and somebody could have struck out if how about Patrick Wisdom the other day? He's up there. They call a strike on a pitch that's this far outside. He would have walked in that at bat, and instead he ends up getting out, and and the Cubs lose. So the umpiring could be a lot better. Richard says the heart attacks in the 8th and 9th. Who would have thought today, Richard, would have been a heart attack? It was like it was a blowout. It's 5-1. No, it was 6-1, right? Yeah, it was 6-1. And then all of a sudden, like, you turn around and it's like the walks, Hey, we'll bring this guy in, boom, home run, and you're down. That fast, it gets away from you because of the walks. Stole it breezing. Most encouraging thing about the offense this series was that they didn't solely rely on home runs. We had multiple hits in the innings. I cannot agree with you more. Ian Happ, you know what, man? Ian Happ, a lot of us are like, we like Happ, but but he's been the one guy that's been contributing with the extra base hits. But it takes hitting one after another, putting the chain together, putting together great innings to win. And you're right. Like, that's the thing that this offense has got to be able to execute. That's the thing that they've got to be able to do. These guys have got to be able to hit, put together good at bats too. So I agree with you on that. It's not just the result. A lot of times it's how you get to that result. So I thought that seeing them get, put together, string together innings where they got lots of hits was a big deal. I'm with you on that. And I think that is a really good sign for this team right now. Great win. Hopefully Miller will learn from that. I don't trust this bullpen with a 1-run lead. Yeah. I mean, the fact that Keegan Thompson and Colton Brewer back-to-back days are the guys that you have to get in there for the last out tells you that there's no option. There's no closer here. And you won both of those. The other one was the game that Neris blew and I'm sure he'll get some other chances as well. But this is Craig Counsell's right now trying to figure out, like he said in the post-game press conferences, how to get 27 outs. And that isn't there isn't a set group of guys yet out of that bullpen that you can say, this guy besides Mark Leiter Jr., I don't feel comfortable with any of those guys in any of those spots, except I will say this, Leiter is used an awful lot. And I worry about that long term. So to me, it's like, do your best to just try to set up an inning. And if guys pitching, and he's getting outs, let him keep their pitching getting outs and not worry about it as who gets the, who gets the save. You know what? The team needs to get the win. Barry says, we need bullpen help, but I just don't trust Jed to make a smart move. You can't give away future stars for guys that are going to be DFA'd less than a year. Look, I told you guys last year when this channel started, and this isn't a shot at Jed Hoyer or anybody in the front office. And like when this thing started, I told you when you traded DJ Hers for a rental in Alexander for Canario. No, it wasn't Canario. It was Jamer Candelaria. I say you're going to regret this. You're going to regret this deal. And then now the guy's in the big leagues, and the Nationals are like one of those teams on the rise. And what happens is that these guys are in the minor leagues, they just look like a name on a piece of paper. And to make deals at the deadline with the way that things are now, where they've pushed the deadline back further and there's way more teams in the playoffs, the supply and demand simple economics leads us to understand that you got to give up a lot more to get a lot less. And that's what the Cubs did at the deadline last year. They didn't make the playoffs. They gave up. They got Quas, who's not designated for assignment. He could have been, right? I mean, nobody picked him up from what I understand, at least not yet. And then, and then you got DJ Hers and the other guy signed with the Reds and Jamer. So you don't have either one of those guys. And what did you get out of it? You came up one game short. And what's really interesting to me about this is that the Marlins actually made the playoffs, and they looked at their team on paper and said, this team's not that good. And the front office dismantled the entire team because they looked at it and said, hey, you know what? We won way too many close games. We got to the playoffs, but this team wasn't constructed to win the World Series. And if the goal is to win the World Series, that's not what we can do. So we're gonna basically look at the roster. We're gonna try to rebuild, and it's interesting. I don't know if that was the right call or not, but that's what they did. The Cubs looked at it and said, "Hey, we ended up a game short." And the thing that I kept saying back at the end of the season is the goal isn't to make the playoffs. The goal is to win the World Series. And I know that the Diamondbacks made the World Series as a wild card team, but their pitching was better than the Cubs. They were a better team than the Cubs. They beat up on the Cubs down the stretch. I didn't feel like that the Cubs were in the same spot as the Diamondbacks, and especially the way that things ended last year. So I'm definitely concerned with the lack of success that the team had over the last 50 games or whatever. And then what do you do moving forward? And I know that a lot of you guys have kind of gotten to the point now with the front office where you might have given up on Jed Hoyer. He's got a lot to prove. I mean, he's had success as the second guy, but he's never really had success as the first guy. And so I think it might be his last chance to be a front office guy. I mean, remember he was in San Diego. Now he's with the Cubs. So I don't know what's going to happen. I like him as a person, And I think he did a really good job on contracts in the offseason. This team has been hurt. You got to remember that. But we'll see what he does moving forward. Those trades last year, wasn't a fan of either one of them. Maybe the Nelson Velasquez trade isn't going to hurt you as much as the DJ Hurst trade. And maybe they both won't. I mean, who knows? Maybe they both wash up and it's not that big of a loss when it's all said and done. But the guys you got back weren't that good. They didn't help you get to the postseason, and that's the bottom line. If you'd have won those 2 games and got to the postseason, which is so unfair, but it's the truth. You're like, well, we made the playoffs and we had a chance. That's not what happened. So what are they going to do at the trade deadline? Your guess is as good as mine. But there's some really good talent in the system, and the last thing you want to do is make a mistake and blow it moving forward. Chuck wants to know my thoughts on Tomas Neto. I don't know a whole lot about him. I know in the minor leagues he's put up like really, really good offensive numbers. I didn't, and we talked about this yesterday. I don't understand why the Cubs didn't end up putting Kurt Casale in the big leagues. We saw him in the Giants series. He looked pretty good behind the plate. Yan Gomes, and maybe they didn't think that Yan Gomes was going to, turn into a guy that was batting 150, and the defensive metrics were the worst in baseball. And the Cubs catching tandem is the worst in baseball. I noticed that you talk about a sense of urgency. Miguel Amaya today, I thought, played one of his better games. And it's probably because all of a sudden you show up and it's like, hey, they got rid of him, and you're the other half of this team that's not doing very good of backstops. And it's just as easy to move you out as it is to go get somebody else. I think that the Cubs are going to have to invest a really early pick in the draft on a catcher. They've got to go out and draft the catcher of the future. It's a position, and I'm telling you, I've talked to scouts about this. It's a position right now around the game that doesn't have a whole lot of depth. And look, honestly, it's been a position like that before. I mean, this isn't the first time that baseball hasn't had a lot of catching depth. But we saw this year how crucial it is. And it's the one position, we talked about this at the very beginning of spring training, and we'll talk about it right now, that the organizational depth is this low. And then some of you guys see Moises Ballesteros' offensive stats, and he's been a hit machine. We'll see what he does in AAA. But he is not ready defensively. And part of that is he hasn't caught enough games to go to the big leagues and be able to hang in there. And you would hate to put a guy and they're not going to do that. I mean, he might catch a lot more now. He's going to have to work on his body too, I think. I think he's just a little bit too big. He's going to have to be a lot more athletic to be back there. The Ogilvy or whatever the guy's name on Bad News Bears, when you put the big guy behind the plate and he just sits back there and catches. It's not like that. It is a very athletic, tough position. It is the toughest position to play on a baseball field because it is so physical. You're getting balls bounced off of you. You get hit by bats sometimes. Mentally, you're working with a guy behind you. You got to help call games with the pitchers, what the pitchers are doing as well. So maybe Neto comes in and he does a good job. I hope so. But the Cubs felt like that was a better option than what they had with Yan Gomes. And I don't want to say this about Yan Gomes. I met Yan before. I'm a fan of his person. He's had a great career. He's a 37-year-old guy. Fantastic person. Lights up a room with his personality. He's a leader. So whatever he does moving forward, I think all of us feel the same way. We wish him the best and appreciate his time playing for the Cubs. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't end up doing something like this, like talking about baseball and being some sort of a baseball commentator. Richard says if the Cubs lost this game, Cap would have gone wild. I worry about him. Man, I just love Cap. The funny thing about Cap is, you guys know Cap used to be was like one of the Cubs TV guys when their games were on CSN Chicago. And that's how I knew him. I dropped videos over there and got to know the whole crew. And everybody would say, man, you got to meet Cap. You'll love Cap. You got to meet Cap. You got to do this. So I did. I met him. And then I was the broadcast voice of spring training. And he asked me, I think he asked me maybe, hey, could I do a game with you? And he did color and I did play-by-play. And it was so much fun because we're both pretty passionate Cubs fans. I love Cap. I'm telling you, I think we all felt the frustration with this team, and not just Cap. I think we all felt like it wasn't the winning and losing. It was just the fact that we were talking about before. I felt like there was no sense of urgency. I felt like they played like a dead fish. Pete Crow Armstrong, like, how about watching him run the bases? And I know he got doubled up in this game. But man, I love watching that guy play. He's that. We need more of that. And I felt like today's game, we did have that. I just felt that sense of urgency, and I got to give him credit. All right, here's another question. Did you watch Estrada pitch for the Padres today? No, I didn't. So I don't know what Estrada did. I've watched Estrada pitch many times coming up through the system. I know what he can do. I was surprised when the Cubs designated him for assignment. I'm not surprised as much that he's having success. Big League Baseball is tough. And you heard Craig Counsell talk about Michael Busch today in the postgame. And if you didn't, he was saying, hey, this guy's having a really good rookie season. Making that transition from, the minor leagues to the big leagues is tough. He was just giving him a lot of credit. Estrada's dealt with that stuff as well. So I don't know. I guess maybe one of you guys could tell me. But I know he's had a really fantastic season so far for San Diego, and a good find for them, and a tough loss for the Cubs. Gaming with Jason, I'm proud of Hap. He's been providing Gold Glove defense and the slugging. He sure has. He sure has. I got to give the guy credit too, man. I got to give the guy credit, and I talk about the comments, and Hap got off to a slow start. He had the injuries, but we were wondering who's the guy that's going to step up and just try to lead this team doing something. And it was Hap, and it's been Hap. And now we're starting to see some of the other guys start to swing around, but Hap's had some big games. Another big hit today with the power. Happ and Bush should bat before Morel. Yeah, I mean, Morel, I don't know if Morel's in a slump or he's hurt, but I can't argue there. CJ says Cubs should sell at the deadline. I think it depends on where the team is. I think that a lot of this depends on where the team is. That's when you decide if you're going to sell or not. When you are a big market team, you should always be trying to win. And I get that. And I've heard that from people. Tom Ricketts wants to win. I've talked to him. I know him. He cares about winning. He's a Cubs fan. And you guys, if you don't know that, I mean, he really is a Cubs fan. Like, he met his wife in the bleachers. Like, he loves the Cubs. But he's also, kind of a disciplined business guy, and he's hands off on a lot of stuff. And if he hires somebody to do a job, he lets him do it. And that's not how I would do it. If I owned the Cubs, I would probably be a lot more like George Steinbrenner than Tom. But I love Tom, and I know he cares. With that said, if the Cubs are like lingering in no man's land by the time the deadline comes, I think that maybe they should take advantage of the seller's market. But we'll see. You know what? I mean, we're talking about 2 wins now after just a month of, over a month of playing terribly bad. So we'll find out. But Twig says 2-0 without Tauchman. Yeah, that's surprising because he's been one of the best players. I love this comment. Barry says, I feel like there is a big lack of situational awareness for the Cubs batters. I have had a problem with this for a long time. I have. I'm to tell you. And I don't know if it's the game or if it's organizational or if it's generational. I don't know. one of the reasons I wasn't, and I have never been a big Brennan Davis fan, and I like him as a person, and I don't mean that I'm not a fan of wanting to see him do well, but I never liked his situational awareness as a hitter. And maybe he's developed that since I'm not watching him anymore every day. But those guys that know that I don't have to get a hit to help my team be productive are the type of players that you win with. You know, when you're not afraid to ground out the second to move a guy to third, or if the infield's back and they're giving you the run, put the ball in play. Barry, I don't know if this is the Cubs or if this is the game. And what I mean by that is, for as many games as these guys play in all of the leagues that they play in to get to the major leagues, it feels like everyone's more worried about hitting a home run than winning a game, and getting a strikeout than winning a game. And situational awareness is a part of that. So I don't know. Now, Stoll, let me tell you this. I got this. Let me show you this hat because I love it. It's got, this is like one of these right here, and it's part of the mint collection that they have out right now. So you guys can get it. There's a boat hat, and I mean, I've just got all these Cubs hats, but I love this one, man. Like this, it feels like summer when I'm wearing this Cubs hat. And anytime I would go to the games, and you go outside and you look at all the different stores and stuff, you know, outside of Wrigley, and the guy that's got like the homemade merch, I'm always interested in that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never the type of guy that's like, when I was a kid now, I always had to have just a regular blue Cubs hat because that's what the team wore. Now that I'm older and more sophisticated, give me something like this and let me rock it for a little while. Michael, what's up, man? Thanks for being on here. Go Cubs. Any memories of Mays? Okay, I don't know if you guys watched the show that this morning. I talked about Willie Mays, but I'll talk about Willie Mays right now because I love Willie Mays. So first off, I met Willie Mays and got to talk to him at length. And so it started when I worked for a team in Chattanooga called the Chattanooga Lookouts. And one of my clients was a health company, like an insurance company for seniors, and their spokesman was Willie Mays. And so I got to be friends with, just from working with them, the people that were basically the regional and all that people for HealthSpring. And I said, hey, why don't we bring Willie Mays to Chattanooga? Why don't we bring him? And his face was on all the billboards, and, he did the commercials, and it took work, but we did. And so that was the first time. This is years ago, but that's the first time I was ever around Willie Mays. And, and like, you ask him the question, like the question right away, like, what was that catch like in the 54 World Series? And he was like, well, he goes, man, it wasn't the catch. He goes, I made those catches all the time. He goes, but it was the throw that got, that kept the runner on because we couldn't give up a run in that spot. And you watch him, he runs back and catches the ball and then throws it. Then I started asking him about something that is of a lot of interest to me. And that's why I'm in Birmingham right now to go to the game tomorrow, the Rickwood game, where the Giants and the Cardinals are playing, and honestly, in Willie Mays' honor now, right? But it was to honor the Negro Leagues, and I always wondered, as a guy who has just a passion for this game, wondering, like, what if Willie Mays wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to play? Right? Maybe the greatest player ever. And if it's not him, it's Babe Ruth. So it's either Willie Mays or Babe Ruth to me. I don't think there's a third. I think that it's those two guys. But what if we didn't give him that chance? And I feel like the guy that really, to me, exemplifies what I'm talking about is Satchel Paige. Another guy, ironically, that's from the state of Alabama, where I'm at right now, who didn't get the opportunity to play in his prime. But a lot of people that saw, including our friend, Cubs Hall of Famer Billy Williams, who's from the same town as Satchel, think that that the guy could have had 400 wins. I mean, that's how dominant Satchel Paige was. But he was a showman like Willie Mays, like made the game fun. You know, we talk about it on here, talking about the Cubs team from this year. What are the things that we can't stand? We can't stand when there's not effort. We can't stand when they play like like a dead fish. You know, these are players that were electric. And so it's just always been something. And I love talking to Billy Williams about Satchel Paige. So I was the conversation with Willie Mays. You know, what was it like playing with Piper Davis? And basically he was saying, hey, I was a young guy that could run. And Willie's dad, I think his dad was on the team. And that's how he got to play for the Negro League team and the Birmingham Black Bears. He said his dad had to sign a contract basically saying that he was allowed to play. So I love talking to Willie. And then one of the things that I'll tell you guys too is if you ever listen to my games that I broadcast, the bottom of the sixth innings, this date in baseball history, but it's not just Cubs history, you know, it's baseball history. And I love going and finding a story, you know, and I talked about that on the show earlier, right? And going out there, like when Willie Mays hit his 500th home run, what was that like? You know, who got the ball? I always want to know that, right? What did they do with the ball? Did he get the ball? You know, what was it? Well, how much pressure was on him? But Willie Mays has some, you know, just an amazing career and an amazing story. The thing I'll tell you, then I ran into him a lot at Don and Charlie's in spring training, and you know I was there for a decade, the whole spring training, and I ate there a lot, you know, because every time someone would come to town, it'd be like, hey, let's go to Don and Charlie's, and that was like the baseball meeting place. And then you would walk in there, and Barry, I'll throw that up there for you. You would walk in there, and Willie Mays would be like in the foyer, like signing autographs. And then I would talk to him about, hey man, you know, it was great to see you, you know, and you know, and just catch up with him. I mean, sometimes you know how autograph signings go; they go in waves, right? So you might get a couple minutes, and then here comes a bunch of people. But what the thing I'll tell you about Willie Mays is that if you met him, you would probably not realize that you were talking to the greatest, because he just treated you so nice and with so much respect. He was a lot like Ernie Banks, like same thing with Ernie, like, you know, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? You know, like how they treating you in the Southern League? How you doing this? You know, they just a guy that cares a lot about people and meant a lot to the game. And so Barry says Mobile has sent out some of the greatest players of all time. Billy Williams. Yeah, I'll tell you this, and then I'm going to get back to the Cubs. The 5 Hall of Famers, Ozzie Smith from the Cardinals is one of the Mobile Hall of Famers, right? But Willie Mays' teammate, Willie McCovey, was from Mobile. So Willie Mays and Willie McCovey, both part of those Giants teams, were from Mobile. Billy Williams, obviously. Hammer and Hank was from there. And, you know, and Satchel Paige. So there you go. And, you know, the Say Hey Kid, 24 All-Stars. How about he died in the year 2024? Dan Vogelbach released. I didn't see that. Another former Cubs minor leaguer. And Brian says the Grand Slam was way too easy to call. Saw the situation. Yeah, I did too. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, do we have enough room here not to blow this? The bullpen's going to need a lot of work, guys. There's just no doubt about it. And this is, I feel like this is a good time for the Cubs to have a day off. And I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make some more moves. I think they need to make more moves. Let me give you an update on some, you know, what's going on injury wise, roster wise. You guys mentioned it before. Tomas Nido is the Cubs' new catcher. Yan Gomes designated for assignment. Gomes was batting 154 in 34 games and just wasn't getting it done. And the tandem of he and Amaya were like the worst statistically in baseball. Really good article in The Athletic a couple weeks ago about that. So something worth it. So Sorry. Can you guys hear me? That's a look at the Cubs, injury situation right now. So hopefully you guys heard all that. Here's another question from Richard. Are you going to the second greatest tribute to Ryan Sandberg on Sunday? First was me naming my son Ryan Michael after, and then yeah. Okay, so let me tell you a story, and then I think this is it. And sorry about I hope you guys heard me when the mic was muted. Yeah. I worked with Ryan Sandberg for a year. And what was crazy is that Ryan was named after Ryan Durham, who was a baseball pitcher for the Yankees. His mom used just like the name, to watch baseball. And then we would go to different cities, and Rhino would meet the other Ryans. And he would take time for everyone. So Ryan Michael would be someone that he would take time, and maybe he's met him already in his life, but I'll tell you, like, that was something that I always admired about Rhino, is that he would take the time to meet those Ryans. And he was named after a baseball player named Ryan, and so was your son. So great. All right, guys, that does it for the show. Just wanted to jump on and do a live show. Anthony will be on in the morning to talk about the Cubs on their off day, and then they take on the Mets 1:20 on Friday. Great win for the Cubs. They're all great wins right now. The bottom line is this, is that the Cubs got to win games. They got to win them any way they can get them. And so it's a start. And they should have swept the series if Neris hadn't have blown that game in the ninth inning. But they didn't. They take 2 out of 3. But it's not how many times you get knocked down. It's how many times you get back up. And this is a great example of these guys getting back up. But thanks for hanging out. We will talk to you again soon, and really in the morning. Share with your friends. Thank you, guys, and go Cubs.